The South African Human Rights Commission says infrastructure challenges at schools in the Northwest are endemic. The Commission released its investigation into the challenges of school infrastructure, in that province after receiving complaints from various education stakeholders, including unions. Some of the findings in this report include the collapsed ceilings and inadequate access to water. Let's unpack the findings further for you. Bring in Human Rights Commission's Northwest Manager, Shirley Mlombo, who joins us via our video link this morning. Shirley, it's great to have you with us. Thank you so much indeed for making time. There were 8 complainants, if memory serves, who brought this issue to your attention as the Commission. And just for context, I wonder if we can begin with you just outlining what the nature of their concerns are or were, and what they were hoping you would investigate as a Commission.
All right, good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to your viewers. Indeed, we commenced our investigation into the inadequate school infrastructure in the Northwest following receipt of 8 complaints where complainants were complaining about the state of infrastructure in schools in their communities. And the specific issues they were complaining about, as you've already indicated in your introduction, collapsed ceilings, collapsing roofs, leaking roofs, cracked walls, floors, classroom shortages, which lead to overcrowding in some schools, staff room shortages, with teachers not having anywhere to be during classes, between classes. Also, in some schools, there were complaints about asbestos structures, which potentially expose learners and staff alike to health harms. There were also complaints of the continued use of traditional pit latrines in some of the schools, as well as challenges with water as well as sanitation in some schools. So while we started the investigation with the 8 complaints, during our investigation, we've received additional submissions, as you've indicated, from unions, from the SGB bodies, from other stakeholders, and we had about close to 100 of schools that were reported to have similar challenges across the province, which is why we find in our report that the school infrastructure challenges in the Northwest are indeed endemic, because they're not limited to the 8 schools that we began with when we started our investigation.
Sure. And as you're speaking, Shirley, we're taking our viewers through some of the images that we've been able to get from the Commission around what you found. As we continue doing that, though, I'm hoping that you'll be able to explain to us whether you reckon there was any kind of, let's call it, a thread that runs through some of these schools when it comes to their infrastructure challenges. On the whole, are you finding that the problems are by and large the same and equally devastating?
Yes, there are similar. Of course, there'll be different degrees from school to school, but the challenge of, cracking walls, collapsing similar, those are quite, we found those in many of the schools that were reported. But of course, the challenges will be graver in some schools than in other schools. But what was concerning is that in some schools, which are relatively new, like the Freedom Park High School, is a school that is relatively new, but it was already experiencing infrastructural challenges which were not superficial but actually structural, with the school cracking from the wall to the floors. So yes, so these are cross-cutting issues across many schools in the Northwest.
Yeah, there are 3 cited respondents from this inquiry. That's the Northwest Education Department, the Public Works Department, and the Employment and Labour Department. How would you describe how compliant, for lack of a better term, they were as you undertook this fact-finding mission, this particular inquiry? Did you find it easy to solicit any kind of response from them at the very least?
No, it was very difficult to get responses from the various stakeholders, which is why then we initiated the inquiry, because on receipt of the 8 complaints, we wrote severally to the Department of Education, and they never responded to our correspondence, so they only made submission as part of the inquiry. The Department of Public Works, similarly, we wrote to them, and we even invited them to the inquiry, but they didn't come to the inquiry. as well as the Department of Labor. Even though they were present at the inquiry, they made submissions, there were undertakings that they made during the inquiry, but they never, implemented what they undertook. And part of the undertakings that they made was that they will monitor schools for compliance with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, as is, required of them in terms of their enabling legislation. They failed to do that. So, on a whole, there is general unresponsiveness from the three departments. But as reported on previous occasion, this seems to be a challenge really in the Northwest, where from municipalities to departments, when we reach out to them, we always have to resort to drastic steps to get respondents to respond to us as a commission. So this challenge is not limited just to these three departments.
Absolutely. I mean, we hear from the Auditor General year in and year out about how the Northwest is home to some of the worst performing municipalities in the country. So in many ways, there's sadly a level of consistency insofar as that is concerned. I can almost hear the cynics among us, Shirley, saying that if these departments' response to you is anything to go by, this will be yet another report that gathers dust with nothing substantial really changing. And I know there's been a discussion about, for instance, bolstering the power or the biting ability of Chapter 9 institutions like the Human Rights Commission. But I have to ask you, what happens next, Does this report run that risk of just collecting dust somewhere? Because in some ways, the Commission is hamstrung.
I know we hope that will not be the case, but as you've indicated, our mandate is not to, provide school infrastructure. All we can do is investigate complaints of human rights violations and report on them as we have done, and is incumbent on especially state bodies to support us in their work. And one of the ways that they can support us is ensure that they implement our recommendations, and especially recommendations of this nature, because the issues are very clear for everybody to see. And we will imagine that the department has adequate infrastructure to let us know implementation. There are other avenues open to us. We will consider all other avenues, which may include court action in the event that it becomes apparent that there is no willingness from the Department of Education, as well as the other departments that are cited in the report, to them.
Oh dear, what a pity. Looks like we've lost Shirley Mlombo there, the Northwest Manager for the South African Human Rights Commission. Oh, Shirley, looks like you're back. Let me take the opportunity perhaps to ask you just one more question. I'm going through part of what the report has found, and there were reasons provided nonetheless by some of the stakeholders, especially the Northwest Education Department, who cited an influx of foreign nationals in the communities in the Northwest, inadequate budget, and a lack of preventative maintenance as reasons to why the infrastructure has deteriorated to the state it's currently at. Well, is that good enough, though? Have you been able to find that, notwithstanding some of those challenges, a whole lot more could have been done than what has materialized?
Yeah, we found as South African Human Rights Commission that the reason given that the influx of foreign nationals may be one of the causes for the challenges, we find that to be unpersuasive. In that, for example, what do foreigners have to do with cracking walls? I mean, their influx cannot result in leaking roofs, crack walls or floors. Yes, perhaps in some areas it can result in overcrowding, but on a whole, the challenges that have been reported cannot be attributed to the influx of foreign nationals. But we did agree that the main challenge appears to be lack of preventative maintenance and lack of an adequate monitoring system to track infrastructural challenges within the system. But all these challenges, only the department can do something about it. So, because they are the ones that have to ensure that there are sufficient resources for preventative maintenance to be undertaken at a school level for minor maintenance issues, and also provincially where, there are structural maintenance issues that need to be attended to. So it is incumbent on them to ensure that preventative maintenance occurs and that financial resources are made available for that to occur. Because as you've indicated, that infrastructural issues are not, additional to educational issues, but they are core component of the right to education. So they have to be centralized the same way that curriculum delivery is also centralized by the Department of Education.
Shirley Mlombo, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Appreciate your time on the AM report this Tuesday morning. Shirley Mlombo is the manager for the Human Rights Commission in the Northwest. I should also add, by the way, that we did reach out to the Northwest Education Department for their side of the story. The response that our team received is that they are still studying this report.